stories on the splash of both the Sunday Standard and the Sunday Nation. Let me begin with our sister publication, that is the Sunday Standard. And dismiss the splash there. I'm sure you have a copy. They're talking about MP's push for Gideon Raila ticket. That is Kanu leader Gideon Moi and, of course, ODM leader Raila-Gideon. And then the headline says, Uhuru succession. 2022 politics dominated the first day of Baringo Senator Gideon Moi's Homa Bay tour, with the area leadership floating a possible joint presidential ticket of NASA leader Raila-Gideon and Gideon Moi.
Well, you know, there's
you have something to say about that.
Of course, yeah. There's no accident in politics. And when you see members of the National Assembly, especially ODM, making any voice public, then it means Raila-Gideon has given them the cue. Because in ODM, you speak without instructions, then you are working on your own. And also, it's very curious that Gideon Moi decided to go to Homa Bay. And Homa Bay, you know, is really the political capital for Raila-Gideon. So when those MPs say anything, Raila has given it a green air, and I think what they're doing right now is to try and test the waters to find out what would be the reaction if somebody says a Raila-Gideon ticket or even a Gideon Raila ticket. And also, in my view, this is a strategy to counter a bit of propaganda which has been doing rounds, that Raila's new position at the African Union is a waste of time, that is not going to add any value. And, you know, people are really disparaging that position, not knowing that it can actually elevate Raila-Gideon to another level. But in my view now, instead of our members of the National Assembly and the Senate talking about 2022, we should be focusing on the issues affecting morale today. And the issues affecting us today is food insecurity. We are not able to have 3 meals in a day. If you go to Mombasa, you've got there are floods, and those are the issues that we are supposed to be talking about. Because our biggest tragedy as a nation is that we rely a lot on the members of the National Assembly and the Senate. They cause problems, and we expect them to give us solutions. Right now, they're interested in 2022. And I can almost bet my head that as they talk about 2022, they're not really serving Wanjiku's interest. They want to be in the good books of Raila-Gideon or Gideon Moi, so maybe they can get some resources for their campaigns. This is really a tragedy. Our members of the National Assembly and the Senate are a major letdown in our political space.
So you're saying basically it's a bit early to talk about 2022?
I mean, we just came from an election last year. We don't even know whether Kenya is a going concern. I mean, with the warnings from IMF, we don't know whether we'll be able to have a meal on Christmas Day. And instead of these MPs focusing on critical issues, they're looking at 2022. We don't want to be in a state of campaign. I mean, for the guys who were born, say, 15 years ago, all they've ever seen are political campaigns through their lives. When are the MPs going to focus on development issues and give us a break for some time? Why can't we adopt the British model, that you only get to know their election 6 weeks to maybe 6 months to the election day? But right now, the elections are about 4 years ago, and all we hear from our MPs is about possible tickets, possible tickets.
Yes.
Yeah, these MPs are not even addressing the issues raised by IMF early in the week.
Speaking about IMF, we're going to talk about the warning from IMF in detail shortly. But Mark, I'd like to hear your view on this. Of course, you're going to tell us if this is a possible merger. And whoever dropped this bombshell, according to this writer, is saying that Area Senator Moses Kajwang is the one who, said President Uhuru Kenyatta should hand over to leaders who have invested in values and not raw accumulation of wealth. He went ahead saying that the pair, that is Raila-Gideon and Gideon, had proved that they possess the most ideal leadership qualities. Does that surprise you in any way?
You know, in this country, what we call ideal leadership qualities is as varied as the colors on the rainbow. Ideal leadership is strange because a few months ago, we could not have imagined Gideon Moi in Homa Bay. So that's credence, of course, to Raila-Gideon shaking hands with Uhuru Kenyatta. But at the same time, we forget that the same tension was formed by the same Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila-Gideon. So this country has, we recycle and get surprised when, it's like we have a dirty cloth, we wash it and we say, this is a good cloth, then it gets dirty again. And that's what happens in this country, that we have not defined A, what leadership is, we've not defined B, what succession is, because a successor for Uhuru Kenyatta, we must ask ourselves, what was Uhuru Kenyatta building? The problem is we have Moi Kibaki who was building a 3-storied house, then Uhuru Kenyatta built a 4-storied mansionette, then Raila Odinga will come and build an airport. So there's never a succession plan by which we can say, based on where we are going, this is the best person to take over.
Yes.
Succession is supposed to be like a relay, but we do it in a haphazard manner. We take a relay baton, we were running a 100-meter relay, we give it to Kipchumba who runs a marathon, so he runs slowly. Then you give it to someone else who will run medium because he thinks it's 800 meters. Where are we going as a country? That's the question. What are the immediate concerns of our country? IMF, corruption, tribalism, those issues. Who is addressing them? How is electing Gideon or Raila or Ruto, for that matter, addressing these issues? Those are the questions we should be asking, not playing to the tune of the person who pays you the highest amount of money. And that's the biggest problem with our MPs. The same MPs tomorrow will change their minds based on how much money is given to Ataharambe. That's the issue. So there is no policy, there is no principle, they're not standing behind Gideon or Raila because they believe in something. They're standing because that's where the bread is buttered. And that's the issue with this country. No one is telling us we want Ruto to be the next president. Why? Is he going to fight corruption? Is he going to end impunity in this country? Is he going to end tribalism? Same questions for Raila Odinga, same questions for Gideon Moi and for everybody else. Those are the questions you should be answering before we say who is a better successor.
Very important questions there, and I think that's something that Kenyans have to think about instead of just looking at these names among the political class. Kipchumba?
This is
this a merger that is going to as interested you in any way?
I have no interest because this is pure hypocrisy. It is like asking me to compare sausage and nyama choma. No relation at all. But because they are in the same table, we must dissect them. Look at it this way. A few months ago, the same people today telling us Gideon and Raila should team up were telling us, wait a minute, we don't want to discuss politics. We want to implement the handshake. Is this part of the handshake? I don't know. It is them who know. And that is the danger of having a national discourse committed to two people and in secrecy. Now we are not aware if this was part of the handshake or not. But the main thing is this. If you are to ask yourself, if we really need the politics of Gideon and Raila, what will we get that is extraordinary from the two? The other point is this. I think 5 months ago, just immediately after the handshake, we saw Edwin Sifuna, the Secretary General of ODM, and Cleophas Malala, the blue-eyed boy for Raila in Western Kenya, obnobbing in different functions. I think this is now the crystallization of that. There must be something being done in the backstage. And this is what we are just, as Disma said, they are trying water. But what sickens me is that what will Gideon add to a Raila ticket? The people, Gideon brings only a name in a campaign, strictly. There is nothing more, maybe on the funds. But in terms of a campaign is won largely on numbers. Because one, Gideon cannot bring euphoria. And Raila, what Raila needs at this juncture, as he's aging politically, he needs somebody who can inject energy in his campaign. What you have seen Kina Malala and Osotsi doing, that kind of energy. Gideon comes in as a prince. And for the two, this will be a pure aristocratic ticket, which brings nothing on the table. Because it's the same, you'll be replacing one establishment presidential person with another establishment candidate. I think it will be hard to sell this one.
And I'm sure the people who have a different opinion with regards to the possible merger between these two individuals. And now let me take our viewers to the splash on the Sunday Nation. We're going to get the first page on the screen shortly. And it has everything to do, this must with the analysts are taking stock of the political realignments and new realities in Kenya, and they've put up photo of all the top individuals in the political class, starting from President Uhuru Kenyatta over to ODM leader Raila Odinga, Deputy President William Ruto, and they're saying 1 year after disputed repeat elections and a season of political madness crowned by handshake, top leaders have drawn new strategies to remain relevant with the 2022 ambitions in mind, and they've put a profile of each of the leaders there. Once again, Dismas, are you saying it's a bit too early to talk about this?
Well, I wouldn't force the nation for that headline, because essentially what they're doing is they're doing a stock check and telling us what are these top political leaders been doing for the last 1 year, or even with the advent of the handshake, what progress have we been able to make? And of interest is what they say about Moses Wetangula, that he's behaving like a jilted lover. And those are the terms that I've taken from Mark Bichache. He loves using them for some reason. And so for Wetangula, he doesn't seem to know where he's heading to, because a few days ago he was seen to be, I mean, he was flirting with Mr. Ruto, and then a few days again, after the lawyers told him they're unhappy with number 2, he decided to say, no, wait a minute, I'm not going to be Ruto's running mate. So I'm wondering whether Ruto is going to be Wetangula's running mate, or even if the Constitution allows for somebody who's been a deputy president for 2 years to take office again. And then, of course, there is the deputy president, Ruto. I mean, 6 years ago when he cut a deal with President Kenyatta, he was sure that after 10 years, he was going to be the preferred successor. But as we sit right now, there's a bit of a challenge. And, I mean, you've seen what the MPs referred by media as allies have been asking questions. I mean, they've been wanting to blackmail President Kenyatta into giving a black or white answer. Will you be supporting Mr. Ruto? Give us an answer. Is it a yes or a no? So Ruto finds himself in turbulent waters. And one can easily argue that probably Ruto is the most powerful deputy president or vice president in the world, because I mean, he was not told that William, come and be my running mate. He has his own political capital. So he finds himself in uncharted territory, and I think he'll be swimming with crocodiles, the mambas he spoke of when he was in Bukungu Stadium a few days ago.
Yes.
And then, of course, now there's Musalia Mudavadi, and the nation says that is trying to reposition himself as a one-man opposition, as somebody who's been giving ideas. And again, to his credit, as all these other politicians have been jumping from one town to another using expensive choppers and understand giving out a lot of money, he's come out to give solutions. Not only is he describing the problems, but is giving the solutions on what ails the nation. And then, of course, now there's President Kenyatta. He sits in a very tight corner because he's got people who are said to be close to him who are interested in succession, and others who are interested in the Big Four agenda. And depending on which direction they pull, Kenya will be a success or Kenya will be a failure. And he doesn't know what to do. And then, of course, there is the enigma, Raila Odinga, and the entire political space in Kenya is anchored on his thinking, because he's an enigma, and if anybody who tries to ignore Raila Odinga, you do it at your own peril. Because he's got irrational political supporters that if he tells them jump, they'll not be asking why, they'll be asking how high. Like, for instance, if he does one rally in Homa Bay and he says, I don't want to see another politician coming to town, and Gideon lands in Homa Bay, he'll be received with hostility. That's the kind of power he enjoys.
But that shouldn't be the case, right?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, Yusuf, the big question we are supposed to ask ourselves, have we identified our national interest and public interests so that the behavior of every single politician in Kenya is harmonized to that national interest? And the answer is no, because all those politicians with the largest, political capital who are on that page one of the nation, we need to ask ourselves that wherever they take a decision, are they serving our national interest? Like the other day, the deputy president says he's surprised that university graduates would be roasting maize by the roadside. Is that statement consistent with our national interest? When he says that when Chinese are coming to Kenya, they need to be given a certain percentage, was he quoted out of context, or was his statement consistent with our nation? When he says that we shouldn't be investing in humanities, I understand he doesn't have time for persons who've done anthropology or English or literature. Is that consistent with our national interest? When the president and Raila Odinga engage in a handshake without full disclosure of material information, is that consistent with our national interest? And I think as a nation, if we want to be happy, we need to start asking these deep and disturbing questions. Because when you're in a position of leadership, when you've got this political capital, you're not going to use it to be sending nudes all over. You know, you're having a cabinet secretary and a senator fighting over nudes. Now, you would expect that those leaders from Western Kenya at this stage would be fighting on the policy solutions for the sugar crisis, not sending nudes.
Well said. said, Dismas, we're going to take stock of the various cabinet secretaries under President Uhuru Kenyatta in his executive shortly within the program. But Mark, you've had Dismas there. He has touched on President Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga, that is ODM leader, William Ruto. He has talked about Moses Wetangula. But feel free to touch on them as well. But there's one profile here, and Mombasa Governor Ali Hassan Joy Nation says he is almost unrecognizable 1 year later after he dropped his confrontational style to embrace a gentlemanly kind of character. I mean, it seems like you have to be controversial in Kenya for you to be known in the political scene.
Joho last year played to the script of a popular song where Nikutukane ndio ujulikane. That was his thing. And I remember I argued many times and I said that it was Uhuru who was giving Joho relevance at that time. It was almost as if a class 8 boy going to fight with a class 1 boy. The class 1 boy, whether beaten or whether he won, would have been the hero of that story. Whether he landed one punch or he pinched the bully's nose, it would have been the class 1 child who was the hero. And true to that, Joho came out as a very brave leader in Kenya for that period of time. But since then, his star has waned a little bit, mostly because his county of Mombasa has little to show other than the white and blue buildings, which he mandated to be painted. But he has nothing else to show by way of how garbage has been handled, by making the county better. In fact, much of this year, he was seen more in Dubai than he was in Mombasa. And those are the issues that are affecting him. And then I think also Joho is weighing his options in terms of what's going to happen vis-a-vis the referendum and vis-a-vis if there's no referendum at the 2022 elections, because he is considering that you can't run again for a governor, and that means you pray that Raila's option of creating super governors is possible, so you become the leader of the coastal region, or you hope that somehow you will be selected to be someone's deputy, and that is seeming quite unlikely because even in his ODM side, people like Monica Juma have come out quite vocal against what is the ODM line. So he seems to be losing control of the coast. So he has many battles. But one of the things I would like to fault that paper on, there are certain people who are not consequential anymore to the politics of this country. Joho is one. Wetangula is unquestionably another, because when he flip-flops alone. The entirety of Bungoma is not with him. The other person is Kalonzo Musyoka. I do not think he holds the sway that he used to hold among the Kamba people. I think the politicians of significance in this country are only for Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, William Ruto, Raila Amolo Odinga. Is there a fourth one? Yes, there is no other one.
As you continue thinking about the fourth one, I'd like to hear Kipchumba's point of view on the same. Kipchumba.
1 year after a lot of things have happened, I can say there are, down the line, a lot of political careers have been, some have stagnated, some have taken a rise, others are just in the wind. We can't explain where they are. A good example today is, as they have talked about Joho. For me, Joho is a pure student of Raila Odinga. They are crisis politicians. Without crises and abuses, we can't see them on the newspaper because, one, they have questionable intellectual capacity. They cannot engage in anything else apart from that, the empty politic of rhetoric. And I think now with the absence of the battle between Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta, he has now downgraded the battle to William Ruto. So I think he earns his living and his political capital by just hurling abuses. And for me, I will say Joho is a kind of a politician. The only essence he brings on the table is that where he comes from. You put him in somewhere and you say we have Mombasa people, you put Joho. But in terms of bringing votes, I think he brings none on the table. And he's just...
Not even from the coast region?
No, nothing. He just brings the riffraff and all that. The other thing that captures my eye...
Very briefly, Kip, before we take a break.
Why would we have somebody like Gideon Moi in that page? For example, why not Mike Sonko? Because if you ask me, the two, in terms of political capital, I'll take Mike Sonko to the bank and not Gideon Moi. The other question, why have Wetangula? Wetangula is a man, he's actually the person who talks about the wind coming, and when the talk is over, it rains a lot. So he's a man who says A and does B. For me, there is another thing also that we need to communicate to President Uhuru Kenyatta, sorry. He has achieved a lot politically, calming the tension and everything. But now as he's exiting the stage, he should not allow the people around him who have gotten used to power to lie to him that you can bring a Putin thing in Kenya. This is the best gift he can give Kenyans, is to hand over to the next president a cohesive and united nation.
And the next topic has everything to do with President Uhuru Kenyatta's legacy. I'm sure you're going to talk more about that. And speaking about Gideon Moi, I think Nation have already talked about him as well. They gave him a profile saying that the Baringo Senator Gideon Moi shook off a spirited campaign by Mr. Ruto's allies to lock him out of parliament. Now he's building a political networks around the country. And of course, the Standard is also talking about a possible merger between him and ODM leader Raila Odinga. Clearly, we have a lot to talk about on Kenya's political scene. But still, coming up in the program, we're going to talk or delve deeper on President Uhuru Kenyatta's legacy. Is it going